Yes.
I'm Mary Jo.
Nice to meet you. In person. Thanks for reaching out.
Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Tim.
Okay. Do the swearing in.
Tim sends his regrets. His lady friend, girlfriend, I don't know what you call it these days, is in New Haven having a surgery procedure done, and I know he drove her down there and he's with her this morning. We did open up the conference call loop for him to have the opportunity to call in during this point. I was hoping to get him in the beginning, but Michelle just informed me that they're in the process of just starting to go through discharge procedures. So I think he's got his hands full right now. Start out with introductions. My name is Dave Rivers. I'm the Emergency Management Director and Fire Marshal for the town of Old Lyme. I've been heavily involved in the review and finding out the rules of engagement of this American Recovery Rescue Plan, and speaking directly with the Board of Selectmen on many occasions on this, both independently and together. We decided, my recommendation was to put together a broad spectrum of committee to figure out how we spend $2.1 million that was given to the town from the feds. Looking at that, why don't we go around the room and everybody can introduce themselves, and we'll go a little deeper after that. Hi, Mary. So, Bill.
My name is Bill Fartak. I'm the Facilities Manager for the town of Old Lyme. I take care of all of the buildings excluding the school buildings for the town. Dave informed me that he wanted me on this committee, and I am glad to participate.
I'm Jennifer Tatum. I'm the Social Services Coordinator for the town of Old Lyme. I'm also the ADA Coordinator. So I work closely with Mary and the Youth Service Bureau, especially with the fund that we set up through LISB to help folks with all kinds of financial issues that they've dealt with since COVID-19. So.
I'm Mary Jo Nozel. I'm a select woman in town for the last 10 years. I will not be a select woman after November. So I hope to still be part of this committee if I'm allowed to be at some point. But since this act was passed in March, I worked very hard to try and get the town to form a committee so that we can equitably use these funds.
My name is Rick Stout. I'm one of the owners of Benchmark Wealth Management in Old Lyme. Mary Jo had reached out to me to see if I had any interest in being involved in this. I'm very excited to be involved with it. I think it's truly an historic event, an opportunity, and I'm sure it's going to be heavily scrutinized no matter what we do. So I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
I'm Cheryl Poirier. I've been very involved in marketing the arts organizations in town, and I'm the new chair of the Economic Development Commission, and I've been asked to join this committee to represent tourism and hospitality.
I'm Mary Seigner, Director of Lyme Youth Service Bureau. Happy to be here.
And I am Tom Gatoka. I am Old Lyme's representative on the board of Ledgelight Health District, and I've been involved in various projects and programs in the town.
And last one, please. Go ahead, Dennis.
I'm Dennis Powers. I'm chair of MCCD in Old Lyme. Happy to be here.
Okay. All right, so one more formality. Vicki says you have to swear. I swear all the time.
I just need everybody to raise their right hand and swear to solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, your duties as the American Recovery Plan Committee for the town of Old Lyme to the best of your ability, so help you God.
I do.
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to have you just sign that form. And do anybody need a copy of the ethics?
Okay.
Maybe we could put it in part of the minutes so everyone could look at it.
The ethics?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vicki.
Speaking of minutes, will someone volunteer to take the minutes for this meeting. Not asking for them to take meeting minutes all the time, but I'm looking for someone to take meeting minutes today. I am terrible at it.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
American Recovery Plan? Shouldn't it be American Rescue Plan?
Actually, it's the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Plan funds.
Okay.
For what the federal government's calling it. It references the American Rescue Plan, and we will make notation of that we are working under the title of the American Rescue Plan Committee. So as most of you know, the federal government this year kicked out an exorbitant amount of money to assist in the response and recovery from the COVID-19 virus. The Congress and Senate put together guides for the Treasury Department to move forward. Those guides were all condensed into what's known as the Department of Treasury 31 CFR Part 35 Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Program, which is also known as the American Rescue Plan. Overall, there's two documents that we're going to be able to email out to people if they don't. Most of you have already received, I hand-delivered a hard copy of it. You have what I call the 5,000-foot view, which is basically reporting and compliance guides. This is a basic rules of engagement of what the plan covers and what its intent is. From there, you have the meat and potatoes of the document. This is the Treasury document, the 31 CFR that I referenced. And this is the actual rules of engagement on how to determine what proposed funding allocation is used for. It's a pretty broad-based document. It involves providing COVID assistance to public safety organizations, social service organizations. It supports and enhances arts, entertainment, and hospitality, business and industry, the municipal government function, and also infrastructure improvements within the community or entity. Looking at that, you're all assembled here for your expertise, or you're all asked to participate per your expertise. As we went around the table earlier, Phil Partek is responsible for all municipal buildings and grounds. Jen Datum, in cooperation with Mary Seidner, has social services, mental health, addiction programming, ADA programming, everything to do with a social service aspect. Cheryl Poirier down the end was asked to participate because of her knowledge, experience, and worthiness of the arts, entertainment, and hospitality industry within the town. Dennis was asked to participate for the business and industry portion of town. And your gentleman's name again? Tom. It's nice to know you serve on Ledge Lights board. They're also a public safety entity that I'm in contact with who has an interest in possibly utilizing or asking for some of these funds also. And I represent everything from public safety, being fire, EMS, public works, public health, emergency management, and police. So looking at that, after going through this document, finding out exactly what they're speaking of and where these fundings can be utilized, my recommendation to Tim was to break it up under those titles and to find the appropriate people. So that's why we're here. So looking at this, that's the introduction. Any comments or questions?
What will the overriding goal of this committee be?
I feel this committee, placing this in the Board of Selectmen's hands and trying to make a determination has a certain level of transparency. The purpose of this committee, because of the expertise sitting at this table, my view on this is to be able to gather the information, the operating requirements of what the Treasury says we can and cannot do, and then going back out and reaching out to the community with your specific target areas to find out exactly what the interest is or what the need is within the community at large. Such as Cheryl being able to reach out to the arts and entertainment and hospitality, between everything on Lime Street from the Art Association, the Florence Griswold Museum, the Roger Torrey Peterson Estuary Center, the Old Lyme Inn, the Shore Road Inn, the beach community, the Soundview District, to be able to see what arts, entertainment, and hospitality was missing during COVID, and what kind of recovery efforts do those entities or organizations need or would like to be able to stimulate them back into post-pandemic conditions. Looking at it from the social service aspect, what need has arisen throughout COVID-19 in regards to their specialties of child care, adult assistance programs, family assistance programs, mental health addictions, drug addictions, whatever. Have them reach out to their portions of the community to be able to determine what the effects of COVID was and how utilizing these funds can help stimulate and support their efforts in reaching out to the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And if I
we will prepare a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Is that what we will do?
The thought and the plan on this is for this committee to work together and then be able to outreach to their specific expertise or expert areas on the outside, do a survey or do some type of fact-finding to find out what they would need, bring it back to this committee, and then let this committee make a final recommendation to the Board of Selectmen of how these funds will be distributed.
Thank you.
But I think part of this, if I might say, is we, as a result of COVID, are sort of living in a new normal, not to overuse a catchphrase that's been used a lot, but we've seen just in the facilities that the town owns a real change in posture in how things get done and the requirements for those things. Indoor air quality now, which was sort of always been kind of an issue, now is out front and a requirement before we do anything here or in any of the other buildings. Making sure that the buildings are secure so that we can keep track of folks in, folks out is going to become a priority, so that when a condition like COVID rears its ugly little head again, we're not racing to buy pieces, parts, to cobble together something that'll get us through next month. We can sort of target this more long range and develop systems to do that. I mean, before all of this, I mean, my focus was, you know, Tom, you've been in enough meetings, where I was trying to develop a preventive maintenance system for the town so that the buildings got painted when they were supposed to get painted, systems got replaced when they were supposed to get replaced. We didn't do the typical government thing that we did at the Department of Transportation, is drive it till it breaks and then run a dozer through it and build a new one. You know, so with COVID, it sort of spun that on its head and said, you know, that was a good first step. Now you need to do these things. Now you need to consider air purifications and systems for buildings, better filtration, watch the activities that go on in the building, and I think that should be part of our recommendation process. And I also think that after reading this document, there are reporting requirements, either quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, that as part of the package that we present to the selectmen to enact, we will also have an obligation, I think, as a committee, to construct something either quarterly, semi-annually, or some sort of measurable goals to see how we're progressing with spending this money, if you will, in the different areas in the town. I just want to sort of enunciate that a little bit.
Well, I pretty much bounced off the agenda titling, but
Sorry.
that was covering the introductions. Based on this, we need to decide who's going to chair this committee. Personally, I have my level of involvement on it, so I'd like to say I'm not a candidate for the chair, and I throw it out to the floor for anybody to recommend or speak out in the interest of becoming a chair.
I'd like to recommend Tom Katauka as our representative from Ledgelight to chair this committee. Sorry, Tom.
I'm speechless.
Would you be willing to serve if appointed, Tom?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Cheryl?
What?
We're going around the room.
Oh,
Actually, I'll start. We went from Mary down. Go ahead. Any voicing or other thoughts?
I've only just met Tom. I'm obviously familiar with the organization with which you represent. I don't have any qualms whatsoever about anybody sitting around this table serving as chairperson based on what I know or don't know. So I would fully support that nomination.
Okay.
I echo that. I just met Tom, but happy to support that.
Mary?
I'm happy to support Tom.
Okay. Tom?
Well, I'm noticing that people who don't know me are most supportive of me.
Will you release your income tax return?
You seem like a fine fellow, Tom.
I know Tom a little bit, right, Tom?
Yes.
I would be glad to support that.
All right. Jen?
Yes.
I haven't worked with you in the past, so I take into consideration everybody's comments here. I know I worked with Dennis in the past with the MCCD group, and I know that I've attended progress meetings with you, and I think they're very well run. I like to throw Dennis on the stage. So based upon that, do you have anything to say?
Well, I think it would be useful for the group if it's two nominees to get bios or backgrounds, so we can see is one any more or less qualified than the other. I'm not running for office. I got plenty on my plate. I can do it. I'm sure you can do it. But how do we?
Good day, good day.
Oh,
There you
Welcome,
are.
Jen.
Oh, listen to you all there.
Hey there. How's New Haven?
Yeah, well, we're returning from the hospital, so,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, just to bring you up to speed, we have a total of 8 people here.
Who's on the phone?
Tim Griswold.
Dennis Powers, Phil Parkek, Jen Datum, Mary Jo Nozel, Richard Stout, Cheryl Poirier, Mary Seidner, Tom, how do you pronounce your last name, Tom?
Gasoka.
And myself.
Very
And
nice. Wonderful.
we did I did a brief introduction on the plan and made reference to the supporting documents that we'll have available to people. And we're in the process right now. We just went around the table looking for nominations for a chair. Tom expressed interest, or Tom was nominated as a chair candidate, and also Dennis was nominated as a chair delegate or candidate. And that's where we stand right now. Do you have any comments?
Well, yeah, when I was talking with John Forbes, concerning the business community, we have two representatives from MCCD, and I think in as much as they're pretty well versed in terms of guiding individuals and people in their business plans and charting their future. I know Dennis would do a good job, not to subtract from anyone else, but he also resides in Essex, so that alleviates a bit of a hometown person being, you might say, influenced by local things. So that's one observation I'd make.
Okay. So, any other comments or recommendations from the table here?
Oh, well, since I nominated Tom, let me just give some reason why I think that. And Dennis, welcome. I don't know you either. I've known Tom for 10 years. Tom and I served on a grant committee that was looking at taking care of our garbage with a program about 10 years, and that's where Tom's background is in healthcare. A representative for Ledgelight, which, considering to the pandemic, seems perfectly germane. He also has a background in and I've seen how Tom interacts on committees. He is very capable of working, even though he lives here, in a very fair and equitable manner, and assigning us tasks to be done. So I think having someone that lives in town is very important. And I also think Tom, knowing this town, has a broad-based understanding of the elements each of us represent at this table. And I certainly think that we'll all help whoever the chair is equally. Does that help with a little bit of background?
Yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to add, Dennis, I think you're going to add a lot to this committee. I'm very worried about the optics with the rest of the community if we have an Essex resident chairing this committee. I don't think we're going to get, I think we could get some negative feedback from community members if we have someone who isn't a resident chairing this. Regardless of how much expertise you're bringing to the committee, I worry about the optics of that. We tried to get an Essex, Old Lyme employee who is an Essex resident onto the EDC, and it wasn't allowed because they weren't an Old Lyme resident. And they had EDC management experience that would have been valuable to us. So I know the community pushback on having people outside of Old Lyme sharing things, or I worry about the optics of that. That's my point.
Okay. Mary, any comment?
No, I mean, I've worked with Dennis on a couple MCCD projects together, and find him to be capable, and I think both gentlemen would be great chairs. So I do share Cheryl's concern, though. I do think that the community is going to scrutinize whatever we do.
Yeah.
So that part worries me a little. But.
Jen, any thoughts?
I agree with Mary.
Bill?
I agree there may be an optics issue, but I will say this, I do like his connection with Ledgelight Health District, only because the source of this committee comes out of the COVID-19 issue, and I think that's a liaison and some insight that the committee would certainly value. I don't know Dennis. I think I met him once or twice. I'm good either way, but I just wanted to sort of punch that up a little bit.
Tim, you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Just backing up real quick before we go to a vote or any more comment on this. I did brief the group here on what basically the simple mission statement is. To be able to, because they've been invited because of their expertise, to be able to work as a unit, to make the best recommendations to the Board of Selectmen on how to utilize these American Rescue Funds for the best support for the community in general. We're still in agreement on that? Tim?
Yes.
Was I correct in that statement?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we kind of got caught up. We're caught back. Calling for a vote then. All in favor of Tom as chair of this committee, recognized by raising your hand. Congratulations. I blessed thee as chair. I relinquish this honor chair. All right, Tom's going to serve as our chairman on this, Tim.
Very good.
Okay. Anything else you want to bring up while you're driving and talking on the phone?
Oh, sure. Multitasking. We just want to add that we have received several communications from the outside requesting funding, and I can share that with the group once we get going in that direction. One of them is from the local council of government. Another one is from Ledgelight Health District and some other nonprofits and so forth. The COG also spoke of the Middlesex County Revitalization Committee, I think it is, Jeff Pugliese, and that body, even though it's in Middlesex County, could serve as a resource to us when and if we wish to have them evaluate requests from businesses, and I'm not sure about individuals, but for sure businesses. One of the concerns that I think the selectmen have is that if we opened the door and said, come one, come all who have any impact from COVID with respect to businesses, nonprofits, and individuals, that we could get a lot of applications. We could make outright grants to the persons who request, or we could make loans perhaps, which would be another process. So I think having some help to sort through these requests would be invaluable. We simply do not have within our town government the resources to evaluate these things. So as we go down the path, I think the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut could be a resource, and so we need to explore the process as much as then we can move to the request. So I just wanted to share the fact that we have received some requests, and they all seem very wholesome, but although it's $2 million over 2 years, if you start making reasonable grants to organizations and people, it'll go quickly. So we need a good roadmap before we make promises.
Okay. All right. So based on that, you're in conversation. I'm going to turn this over to Tom and let him share the meeting.
Sure.
Okay?
Very good.
It's all yours, Tom.
Should I say thank you? Or...
I don't know. Maybe too early to tell. So, looking at this, moving forward, this document, or this plan, covers public health, negative economic impacts to the community, where it falls under household and individuals, businesses, pre-existing disparities within the community. It's very broad scope. Are you familiar with this at all?
Only what I've read and in the New London Day and other.
Okay.
So,
but
I think Michelle said that she has.
We have copies available to anybody who would like to get another hard copy. I know I distributed some out to people to try to get them involved in it.
Well, I think that's the appropriate starting point for me.
Okay.
To learn what's in that doc.
Okay. An overview on it is the funding streams have to be utilized with or incorporating in how COVID affected the community or the entity at large. The plan gives a lot of leeway, and as you read through this document, it gives you a lot of leeway on interpretation. So my suggestion would be for everybody at this table to either reach out to me and get a hard copy, or we can have hard copies available to you when we leave, and get them, recommend that they get familiar with the plan in its large form.
Now, are there any organizations that are specifically excluded in that plan?
No. It covers just about any opportunity out there, from the scouting programs all the way up to public safety within a municipality.
Including individuals.
Yes.
I've been watching other communities and what they're doing, and there's been many articles in the day, at least, with certain communities with like complete reports and lists of what they've come up with and descriptions of their process. And I have found it interesting that some communities have done a community survey to get input from all the residents. You know, I'm not sure how the survey will be written, but that might be helpful to do, just to take the temperature of our community and see what they're thinking too. They might come up with some ideas that we wouldn't consider.
Tom,
That's what Guilford did. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I take a step back, Tom? I would just like to make sure that everybody here understands, or at least the questions that I have. I have several overriding questions. The first is, what is our deadline to come back to consensus recommendation to the Board of Selectmen? That's my first question. My second question is, where do these funds reside now? But, you know, are they something that will be over 2 years? I wasn't quite clear on when and how these funds are received.
That one I can answer.
Okay, go ahead. That'd be great.
The town did receive 50%, or $1.something million, which is sitting in a non-interest bearing account.
A non-interest bearing account.
What's that, Tim?
He said.
A non-interest bearing account according to the rules.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Rules. Oh.
Well, we understand why that is. We want to have the incentive to get it out.
Correct. And we have received, to the best of my knowledge, we received 50% of what was allocated to us.
when do we need to make the recommendations to the town, and when do we have to spend the $1 million and then the second?
As I understand it, we have 2 years to figure out what we want to do and 2 additional years to actually do it. Total 4 years.
Well,
Correct.
it's sort of laid out that way.
Yes.
It has to be by 21 March. You have to have been impacted, I believe, and then you have 2 years from there till December 31st. And if the work is underway, you have till the following March of 24 to spend it, if my math is right, but something like that.
So I guess my third question would be, or not a question, but an observation. I think it will be useful if we, as a committee, come to an agreement on an overarching goal for how we want to, which path we want to go, immediately or staggered. And I think my last question is that I think we should have, you mentioned the term mission statement, maybe one has been written down. I think we need to have something clearly and concise to get out there ASAP so people understand it. And then I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I do want to just list two bits of information about me, just to make sure that everybody knows any potential conflicts of interest that could be perceived, although I feel I can be objective in my recommendations and my actions, and I obviously seek to do that. My wife is employed by the Lyme Consolidated School. I know that there could be some impact to Region 18 from this. I just want to point that out.
Actually, Region 18 is a self-standing entity.
Okay.
These fundings are for the town at large, and it encompasses Regional District 18 received its own pot of money.
Separate. Okay.
Totally separate.
Great. I do own a business on Halls Road. I have no idea where this committee's recommendations may go, but I have been involved in and I have submitted a letter of support generally in exploring Halls Road development. Again, I just want to put that out there. And my letter of support should be on record with the town, and I would like to point out the caveats that I put in that letter of recommendation, indicating that there are many stakeholders in that discussion, and that I assume nothing for any stakeholder other than what I have been told, learned, or can be informed on. So I just wanted to put that out there. Again, I will operate as objectively as humanly possible, but I thought it was worthwhile to just share that with everybody.
Thank you.
Well appreciated.
And then I had a few things, and some of that dovetails right off what you're talking about, Rick, was the same thing. We should probably develop some kind of mission statement so that we take a 50,000-foot view of where we're supposed to wind up. And Tim mentioned something that struck a chord with me, was that one of the first tasks should probably be to develop a process for nonprofit support. And I think some of that may speak to what you just said, Mary, about having either something go out to the community or develop something within our committee that could be shared with the community. And then our process should be an evaluation tool for that. The third thing hits, I think, in my sandbox is kind of develop a needs assessment for what infrastructure improvements would be necessary. My focus is initially for the buildings that the town owns, but if there are other pieces within the art community or within the social services community or within the community at large, if possible, I would probably need another body, but a way to assess those so that we have a consistent application of the funding source.
What did you call that again?
A needs assessment.
Thank you.
And I think that, and then we need to, as part of our mission statement, I hope, is develop strategies to make us function with a united front, so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and we don't look like many other bureaucratic organizations. And that's all I have at the moment.
Oh, you mentioned nonprofits, and I just wonder, where does nonprofits fit in that chart that just went around? Like, there wasn't a section for them. Is it within another section? Because there are so many different types of nonprofits.
Right,
One of the
that's
things
what
that
I
I found,
sort of the argument.
one of the things that I found on researching this document is that NGOs or nonprofits fall into many different categories. They fall into the social service aspect of it, the physical and mental health parts. They fall into the arts and entertainment and hospitality portion because of the organizational structure. They fall into the business and industry part. They fall into the municipality at large also. So putting together all nonprofits into one box is gonna break out.
Yeah,
The spokes will go everywhere.
overlap.
It'll giant overlap. So by looking at it, the way I recommend structuring this is where everything fits into a specialty representation, be it public safety, be it social services, be it arts, entertainment, and hospitality, be it business and industry, be it municipal government, be it program administration or infrastructure improvement. Municipal interests would fall into one of those 8 boxes. Private nonprofits would fit into one of those 8 boxes depending upon what their structural capability or what their structural abilities are and what they perform. The NGOs and the church group and the faith-based organizations would fit into some of these. That's how I envision being able to lay out. Because if we had a nonprofit box or nonprofit person represented at this table, they would be overwhelmed with having all of this of nonprofit within the town in one seat.
And I think it also gives, I think part of what you're saying, I think, is that by doing that, whatever nonprofit comes to this group or the people who are looking for that, it gets to filter through a selection of folks, the infrastructure folks, the art community folks, those in that particular field of endeavor, so that it can be sort of triaged before a commitment's made or recommendations made by the committee. I think that's a good approach.
Dave came and talked to MCCD several months ago, and we kind of understood that we're looking at $2 million over 4 years from now. And our great concern when we started talking about outreach and promotion of the fact that this money's available was that we keep in mind as a committee the magnitude when you start slicing and dicing the $2 million. So Dave just went through a whole list, could quickly get to 20 groups that would get some money. But if you divide 20 into 2 million, you get
not so much.
And if you divide it too narrowly, it won't have any impact at all. And that would happen if we opened it up to the population and gave everybody a check. And it would all be gone in a heartbeat, and nothing would have changed. So our big caution was to develop a process and an outreach and a communication strategy that puts all this in perspective. And at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about a recommendation to spend 100 or 150 or 200 here, and here. It's not going to be life-changing for any of those organizations. And if we do a good job of that, I think we will prevent ourselves from disappointing the majority to help a minority that's going to benefit. It's just a watch out, because as nice as it is to have $2 million to divide up, when you start slicing it, it's not a whole lot of money.
I think that goes back to the initial point, was to develop a process. And I think rather than making, 7,900 people unhappy, maybe you make a smaller number based upon the recommendation of this committee, target it so it has the most impact.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we developed the placeholder positions the way they are. Because the 6 slices, I kind of look at it as like 6 slices of the pie and also 6 sections of a wheel spoke. On the 6 sections of a wheel spoke, they spread out past the rim in multiple different directions, covering a lot of different areas within the community. And it all focuses back or focals back into that placeholder responsibility. If we took $2.1 million and divided by 7,500 people, it would be very simple. We could send $280 with a W-2 form
Have a good time.
to everybody, and we could just adjourn this meeting tomorrow. But, as Dennis said, I personally and professionally do not think that that's the most wisest way to be able to spread this across the community for the best good.
I wish to support exactly what you just said, that is not my personal view.
Yeah.
I also think that I could be, maybe told something that would change my thinking, but in general, I think we should look to have a shorter timeline for distribution of funds simply because of the nature of this historic act and funding source, which was purely designed to address the current, and I will stress current, ongoing impact of COVID. I also think it's interesting to note that one of the provisions that in there is that we really need to pay attention to it being tied to COVID. And one of the prohibitions on this is generally recipients may not use funds for general economic development or workforce development. So as wonderful as it would be for us to maybe entertain a request for something that could be potentially good for the community in the future, and many of the things that I think we will be presented with will be good for the community in the future just because they will be, we have to make sure that we're staying on track and tying things back as best we can to the impact of COVID. And I think that's how we probably, number one, stay within the letter and the spirit of the act, but also avoid undue criticism and scrutiny, which will be coming anyways.
Right, and they also, if you read further in this, they also use, I looked at it as I was reading it, I kind of viewed it as an insurance policy, and meaning that when they talked about COVID, they said you can use the money to bring the entity to the place it was prior to COVID.
Right.
And then the only caveat to that is probably health on the infrastructure side anyway, is like the things that you wouldn't have normally done to the building that resulted from COVID.
Correct.
Other than that, as you stated, you can't go and say, gee, it'd be nice to put an addition on the town hall.
Right.
And that's definitely out. So you have to be careful in how that's allocated.
However, theoretically, wear and tear on perhaps, again, purely out of left field, wear and tear on a police car or an ambulance, that was a result of more hours for whatever.
Right.
I think that's fair game.
You might be able to,
I mean, perhaps.
Yep. But there's, if you read through this document, there are some pretty clear bump stops in there to tell you that it.
I just want to add, again, to Dennis's point, $2.1 million is not a lot of money. So we started the conversation in the Arts Economy Subcommittee of the EDC. The Cultural Coalition of Eastern Connecticut is suggesting that towns allot a minimum or about 1% of their total allotment to arts and culture. So we're talking for arts and culture or tourism and hospitality, $20,000. It's really not that much. But the conversation that we had last week, it wasn't so much that this organization wants to do something or that organization. They're thinking collectively as an arts industry here. And so they're thinking about how do we work together or what can we do to bring foot traffic back to these galleries and museums and music venues. And so they're talking about things to support marketing as a whole, to support, the Midsummer Festival, which hasn't happened in 2 years. Things like that, which will get traffic back to these organizations and then in turn to the shops and restaurants.
I was just going to say, we also know that there's federal programs being developed and hopefully also additional funding coming our way for some other things that we have to bear in mind. And whatever we decide, similar to what we do with a construction project where we go out for request for qualifications, followed up with a request for proposal, where the committee prioritizes the main elements of these proposals, as you know, gives them points like this entity, this topic would get 10 points if this is fulfilled. This topic would give them 5 points. So that at the end we have a really mathematical scale when we make our decisions that's based on, that it can go in our minutes on how we made our decisions ultimately. And we can do that not only for this process, but as additional funds potentially become available.
Speaking of additional funds, I sat through a presentation yesterday with Rivercog and FEMA. And within the state of Connecticut, in the emergency support functions of emergency management, there's a group that was stood up in each of the 5 regions regarding the long-term recovery. And what they've done with COVID and acting as a funnel point, collectively, each one of these support function teams met with FEMA and now is rolling out collectively across the state in each of the regions a long-term recovery plan proposal to work with FEMA, who has access to 108 different agencies and independent grant programs to help gather the needs of the community, possibly do it either individually with the community one-on-one or do it collectively in a regional aspect or multi-jurisdictional projects that are unique or in like form, and then work with the federal agencies on the other side to find what funding streams, what grant applications, or what infrastructure improvement fundings could be available for that, in addition to the municipalities working independently with the ARP program.
I would also
give you a quick example of that. During yesterday's presentation, the towns of Westbrook, Clinton, and Old Saybrook want to combine, have a common what they call the common sidewalk, going from Saybrook all the way to Clinton for pedestrian traffic. Something like that, O-Line could possibly jump onto or get addition to for their Hall Road project. To be able to say, okay, we want to participate in this process solely to have a sidewalk from 156 or Route 1 and Halls Road all the way to Clinton. Another example would be marine dredging. Westbrook, Old Saybrook, and Old Lyme each have a thought process on marine dredging for the marinas. Instead of doing it or trying to apply it independently, this program, this long-term recovery program, would help funnel it collectively into FEMA's hands and let FEMA help through the state support this. So there's many different infrastructure opportunities out there that they're running parallel with what we're looking at in the ARPA program.
Right, but one of the things I wanted to mention while we were talking about that is there are also some stops in here that are real clear that you cannot use this to meet or match another grant.
Yes.
You can't use it to attain, to augment any of that type of funding. It's strictly.
Say you had a federal grant with a 75-25 split. You couldn't use this money to offset your 25%
right. So
process.
Yeah. That's why the development of a process is I think key, Tom, for us to be able to step off and have at least some skeletal structure, and then work in from that to make sure that we
I'd
don't.
like to take off on that idea, and once this is announced to the community at large, we may generate an awful lot of requests from the 7,500 potential or people who think they should be a potential recipient of funding of some sort. And are we going to consider those? Or are we going to, as Dave started out the meeting with the idea of the spokes, are all those requests are all infrastructure requests going to come through you, arts councils and so forth, through the various people representing those groups?
That was my intention on the design of this.
Right. But I think that structurally, I think that we need to, as a committee, if there's, let's say, an infrastructure request, first, I guess I would see if it has merit, then I would bring that to the committee, and then see if it impacts the art community, the social services community, and then once that's done, collectively that decision would get made, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yes.
And then then I'm assuming that we will have other things that we want to do, or on our, that the committee decides are important, and we would have to weigh that request against something that we have, and as a committee we would say, that's a nice thing and it meets the criteria, but we believe this will have greater impact on the community.
And we can also consider what other assistance is already out there. So for in our area, which is social services, there's the Unite CT program, which helps people pay rent and utilities. There's the Coronavirus Relief Fund that Mary and I have been fantastic to have as an option to help people. So, we could direct people to the things that already exist to be able to let us focus on the bigger
maybe
picture.
that's the saving grace at some level. In other words, my intention was to get money from this fund by getting together with the committee. Jen or Mary or Cheryl can say, you know what, we have another funding source that can possibly take care of
Right,
that.
you need help with housing, have you tried this?
Yeah.
But I think we have to have a process that does that, so that I'm not alone making decisions and they're not, and we don't want to leave anybody out in the woods here,
An example of that would be, because I dug into this so early on, I reached out to public safety and had conversations with each one of the department heads or department chiefs, and said, okay, we've got this kind of money coming in. This is the objectives of what it has to be served on. What within your organization would you say would be a want, a need, or a desire to help meet the objective of the offset and minimization of risk of exposure to COVID? Because every one of these agencies are in the public face. So I had with fire, EMS, public works, emergency management, and public health, dealing with Ledge Light Direct and Stephen. And I've got some inquiries or some interests that I was able to bring back. I'm not going to present those now because it's too early. But I think my recommendation is for you guys to go out and do the exact same things within your target areas.
But before that, Dave, should we do and Tom, break up into maybe some small work groups to do some of the structural organizational stuff before we start getting into the weeds of the request?
I think we have to have our mission statement
And the process.
clearly define, like a meeting schedule, application process.
Survey, community survey.
Right, and perhaps we can serve
Timeline.
ourselves well by in our mission statement and what we communicate, really highlighting how and what we will be looking at, and also what we will not be looking at. In other words, if we decide we're not going to go down the individual, grant route or payment route, if we decide that, we perhaps want to really, get that out there. We don't want everybody coming here and telling us, they lost.
Right.
Or tell them to come to us for our funding that we already have. So
I think the next, this is just my opinion, for what it's worth what you're paying for it. But I think the next structural piece for us is exactly that. I think we should, and this is, I don't know how long we want to be here, if we want to be here all night or what, but any meeting that lasts more than an hour and has more than 4 people generally is not productive, but we are doing a great job today of being the exception to the rule.
Okay.
So,
Make it quick.
so my point is that we should probably schedule a meeting that our next meeting, everybody read and digest this document. Come to the meeting prepared to discuss the mission statement, develop a mission statement, and we can put little yellow post-its wherever we want to. Decide what that is, and then handle it like a news story, who, what, when, where, how, and why. And then once we have that nailed down, then I think, Dave, your point is taken very well. We can go out and reach out and canvas and see what fits.
Yep.
And then at least we'll have a point on our compass, and then from there we can move forward. But I think we've done, I think getting this in your head is very, very important, and then distilling it down to let's put wheels on and see if it rolls is very important.
Do you see any benefit in looking at other communities in Connecticut that have...
Yes, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Once you kind of go through this, I think you're going to go like this.
Seeing what roadblocks they hit and...
Has somebody been here before me?
Right.
I don't want to trip over that same landmine.
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should break this up into small groups. 2 people can investigate other communities. 2 people.
Well,
I think we need to develop the big box first, and then at that point.
Script almost like I'm happy to call Guilford and Norwich or whatever, and but we should all be asking the same questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's develop. That's my opinion.
We're at 2 minutes after 1. I agree with everybody's comments here. Tom, if you don't mind, I make a recommendation that, 1, we get these 2 documents in everybody's hands and give everybody at the table the opportunity to review it on each page to get the rules of engagement. 2, figure out how we're going to put together a mission statement, either like what Jen said, you want to create a couple of groups, working groups, one for a working statement, one for a development of a survey of need type request, and a third to do an outreach to see what other communities are doing and bring that back for the next meeting.
There are some other nuts and bolts things, Dave, too. First of all, we need a secretary.
Yes.
Do we have access to Michelle in terms of scheduling meetings? I know this meeting was scheduled with
Tim.
But with some software that she used, a survey.
Doodle.
Yeah. And
is there any...
is this a monthly? Is this a...
No.
What's the timeline for the whole assignment? You could do it in 3 months or 2 years.
Currently, right now, there was a deadline of October 7th to report your proposed plan.
That's tomorrow.
That has been extended.
Whose deadline is that? Federal or town?
Federals. That's been extended, and it was extended out to the 15th, and it's extended out again. It'll probably be extended out again because municipalities are doing the exact same thing that we're doing. So, in my opinion, on all the involvement I've had with the state and the feds is when they tell you a deadline, it really doesn't mean anything because there's nobody on the other end to actually receive it sometimes.
Yeah,
well,
but I think
we should not operate under.
Right. I think, and again, I'll throw this on the table. I think we need to buckle up and sit down in a couple of weeks and have this digested and be in here. And I think we do that as a collective.
I agree, Phil, and I think a couple of weeks is about as long as we probably can get.
Yeah, that's time enough to. You can do some canvassing on your own to find out stuff, and that would impact what I think. And the result of that meeting should be our mission statement and the assignment of committees to do the next piece of business.
I agree.
and to digest this document. I mean, that would be my opinion.
Is there anybody
I agree.
on this committee who's not here today?
No.
Because I thought
there another
Ken said
MDCCD?
MCCD had 2 representatives.
Oh, that's right. What? Didn't MCCD have 2 individuals that you're gonna put for this besides yourself?
Yeah, one couldn't make it today. but-
Okay.
Wasn't there supposed to be somebody from finance?
Yeah, is
Oh, yeah, Nicole.
Nicole or Amy?
That we'll bring back to the Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
having a representation from finance.
I thought that was voted on at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that if Nicole can't come, maybe Amy could. Or there may be meetings where the finance input is not that critical, but at least they should stay tuned.
Correct.
Well, I would assume since they'll be doing the reporting that's required for us to utilize the fund, they need to be actively involved.
Okay, is there a reason why we wouldn't want them involved?
No.
Can we get back to this plan that has to be submitted at a time to be determined? What do we need to submit in that plan?
At this point in time, I have not seen the specifics.
So have a report by tomorrow, but we don't know what.
And it's been extended, so it's kind of like, I think formulating this committee today, coming up with the basic takeaways of reviewing the documents and the rules of engagement, being able to put some thought into some verbiage on a mission statement, and to start thinking about how we're going to do a survey of need to the community would be a pretty good walkaway right now.
Right, I think that's a good takeaway from today, but I think the
Today,
next...
and I'd suggest that we meet again in maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks from
That would be
today?
the 20th.
That would be the 20th of October, at the same time, since everybody came at this point.
Is the room available?
This room's pretty much
In the
always
meantime,
available during the day.
Time after this, I have everybody's contact information. I will get this typed up and shared out to a working group. I will include electronic copies of both of these documents if you do not have them or do not want a hard copy. And I will give you the...
They've been sent out, by the way. They were sent out just before the meeting.
Michelle,
Yeah, I did get them both.
Okay.
If you're putting together that contact list, you might want to include Ralph Wood
Yeah.
and
Yeah, Ralph
Nicole.
Wood.
She was voted in and is officially part of the
Yeah.
committee. Yeah.
So the 20th,
20 at noon.
Well,
same place?
sure.
Same bedtime, same...
You want to do the next meeting too, just to have a date?
Yeah.
You want to do November 3rd?
2 weeks?
Okay.
You will be a private citizen on the Board of Finance by then.
Board of Finance? Thank you.
Or
I
half
didn't know.
Well, yeah, it was election day is the 2nd.
That's right.
I can coordinate with the Michelles for the room.
Okay.
Thank you. And did I hear somebody say that we were also looking at,
Was thinking 2 weeks after our next
Yeah.
meeting might be good to have that on our schedule.
November 3rd.
10:20 and 11 for 12 o'clock.
Does that work for everybody?
Okay.
Okay, and
Side,
at the next meeting, we will hammer out the mission and identify subgroups and participants on those groups.
Do you want, because of the, I jokingly refer to it, there's only so many seats at the table, and each one of the placeholders at this table represent everything behind them. Do we really want all the approaches from the people, from the associations and organizations behind them to be at this table? Or do we want to use the individuals at this table as a buffer point to be able to go back, do research, have conversations, and then bring facts forward?
well, I mean, between the two, I would say that the latter would be the most efficient, but I think that I really need to
We need to
know
have...
what
Yeah.
what the results of our next meeting are
do that.
I think we have a point, we need to put a point on our compass first, before we.
Yeah, all right, so let's work on a mission statement, and work on the survey of need, and review the document, and be able to run with it.
I don't mind taking a stab at a mission statement. If anybody else wants to take a stab, that would be great.
Yeah, and then if you want, either pass it around via email,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
get it critiqued, and,
Okay.
you know,
Yep. All right,
we all
I'll
have big shoulders, we can.
I'll get on that.
And then also, we have an Old Lyme resident, Sherry Cody, who is on the Economic Development Commission. She's also the Economic Development Commissioner, or department head for Guilford and Madison, and she had offered me their survey that they did in Guilford.
That'd be
So I
huge.
can,
That would be, anything, I mean, that speaks to what Mary was talking about earlier.
exactly, yep.
See what's going on.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dave, for putting this together. It's appreciated.
Big money, and it's gonna be a headache to figure out.
Yep, it is.
how to do
It's gonna be fun.
And we're not gonna do it right, because somebody's always gonna complain.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make the best motion of the meeting. We adjourn. For now.
Second.
Until the 20th. Thank you, everybody. Tom, good luck, Godspeed.
More reason to keep.
You get the corporate jet, you get the Recovery Act jet, and the yacht. So-
Tim, you still there, or did you finally hang up?
Hey, how are
Yep, no, I'm listening, thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like a
That's
great
it.
start.
We've got some stuff to do, and we're gonna report back in 2 weeks, so.
Good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have a
Hang up
hard
on you,
copy
Tim.
of that? I'm
Yes, I
thinking
do.
about how.
Productive meeting is- productive